This is my review of the 2019 Mondraker Level RR. This bike is £7,699. It's one of the most expensive bikes I've ever tested. Specs are just absolutely incredible, as you would expect at this kind of price point. It's got an aluminium frame. It's 170mm of travel at the front with a Fox 36 factory e-bike specific fork. The rear is 160mm travel, and that's a Fox DHX2 factory Kashima coil shock. It's dripping with loads of stuff that is just top of the range everything. So the wheel set is the DT Swiss HX 1501, which is absolutely bomb proof. They're fantastic wheels. Carbon bars, Kashima dropper post, everything on it. Every single component is the top of the range component. So as you would expect on a bike that is that much, you're getting the top of the range everything. However, there's one part that is really questionable, and I'm not quite sure why Mondraker have gone for it. It's the Bosch motor. We'll come on to the performance of it in a moment, but the weight of it is 4.1 kilograms. Now, that's over a kilogram heavier than the Shimano E8000 motor that Mondraker actually use in their more trail orientated bike, the Crusher. So it's a really odd decision in 2019 to put a Bosch motor in these bikes because they're bigger, they're heavier, they're more draggy. We'll come on to the performance of the Bosch motor along with the bike in a moment. This bike is really designed for smashing it downhill and turboing back up to the top because it is really long. The reach is nearly 500mm. It's 498mm in XL. The wheelbase is like really long, so when you are going downhill, it is really rock solid and stable. Because of the Bosch motor, it's got a really long chainstay at 490mm, so you get some really good climbing performance, but you do lose some of that agile feeling that you get with a shorter chainstay on the trail. It's got the Bosch internal battery, which looks super neat, and when you look at pictures of the bike, it just looks so nice. In fact, I was at Bike Park Wales recently with it, and one of the guys that works there was checking it out, and he was saying, yeah, how nice the bike is. And then I said, yeah, it's an e-bike. And he didn't even notice because of the integration and the great job that Mondraker have done to put this bike together. It looks really good. The paint scheme is outstanding. It feels really well built. There's very little noise, rattle, shake, the internal cables. It all just works and feels really solid, and when you're riding it, it just feels like a really solid platform. And some bikes you get on, things move about and you can hear shaking and cables slapping inside, but this just sounded like really well put together. So for a £7,699 bike, you really want something that is, I mean, your expectations are already like really high when you buy a bike that's that amount of money. But what I gotta say is that this bike really needs to go into an environment that's gonna make it shine. It is not an all-round bike that can tackle loads of things and do a lot of them really well. It's not a jack of all trades. It is a downhill weapon. I like a lively bike. I like it to feel agile. This bike does not feel agile, but when you take it to some chunkier downhill type stuff, aggressive enduro, this is when it comes into its own. I wanted to try it across as many conditions as I could, so I took it to Bike Park Wales and did a few of the black runs and the red runs there, my local downhill course with some natural sections and some jumpier sections. But I want to try it out on some trails. So how agile is it? What does it feel like if you're just on a regular trail ride in the woods that's, you know, fair old kind of mix of standard trails, slightly more aggressive trails, some berms, that kind of stuff. A couple of things to mention: the 8-speed SRAM cassette. You're either pedaling at a high cadence, then shifting down and going to a much lower cadence, or you just got to put up the spinning fast. It's got too much in between each gear. Riding a little bit faster on a trail, it's quite difficult because the Bosch motor is so draggy over the 15.5 mile/h limit. So if you've got a trail that it's a faster flowy trail with some kind of roots and little bits and pieces that you just want to get some speed up on to clear, because of the weight of the bike and the draggy motor, it's an effort to pedal it fast on a flowy trail. Like here, you're pedaling over the 15 mile/h limit and all you do is you just slow down because it's so tiring to pedal. But compared to some of the other drive units, Bosch is draggy. Oh man, it's so plush. Steamroll through anything. It's these twisties that are a little bit more difficult to handle. And then when it gets a bit chunkier, you can just trust the front end and the shock just to smooth it all out. That's such good fun hitting that stuff. Whew. So when you're using it in its intended environment, which is full-on downhill, really aggressive, big drops, gaps, jumps, that kind of stuff, it gives you a platform that gives you so much confidence. Now, you can pretty much just hold onto the bars, death grip, and point it downhill and it will soak up everything. It is so plush. The coil at the rear, I forget how a coil feels sometimes when you're used to air shocks, but they are so smooth. It's able to soak up everything. So even if you lack some of the skill, this bike will take you downhill, and as long as you hold on and point it forward, it will just munch over absolutely everything. When you start trying to maneuver it a little bit, it's heavy. It's over 25 kilograms. I think this one with pedals was 25.7 kilos, which is pretty heavy for an e-bike. The Bosch motor adds quite a bit to that. You can maneuver it around, but you require a lot more input and a lot more energy to pop it over jumps, and to lift the front wheel up is very difficult because the wheelbase is so long, and you lose some of that playfulness or that agile feeling that you get from a lot of other bikes. But when you're riding it down a hill, on a black trail, for example, at a bike park, that is when it is the bike that I would choose over all the other bikes that I was testing. So if you're riding predominantly chunky downhill bike park, like really aggressive terrain, this is the type of bike that you want to be looking for. This bike really, what I'm saying, is designed to be a brutal weapon for using for hitting the gnarly stuff. Now, that's where it absolutely excels, and to be honest with you, that's what it's designed to do. I found that on my local trails, which are a mix of natural, carved through the forest sections with some short, sharp descents, when you hit the more tech stuff, absolutely, like the bike park, will just cruise down everything. But to navigate it through some of the more technical sections, you needed to manhandle it almost through a lot of them. And it's no wonder it's a longer, slacker chainstay, wheelbase, all of that stuff is really long. So you would expect it to require that, and it absolutely does. It is a tiring bike to ride. Now, the Bosch motor does not do this bike any favours whatsoever. It's really difficult to ride above 15 miles an hour because the Bosch motor, once you're over 15 miles an hour, it is almost not worth pedaling any harder because you get motor resistance. So if you can imagine, you've got a bike with real sticky tyres, slack geometry, a long wheelbase, a bike that's designed to go downhill, and then you've got a Bosch motor to contend with. I really struggled, so I just gave up trying to ride it fast, and that really let it down on some undulating trails where you're going down a little bit through some berms and then back up a bit more pedally, and actually you could ride another e-bike over that limit quite easily and have less resistance on the motor to keep you going. Get onto some technical stuff and point it downhill and then you're cruising and it's absolutely flying. It isn't designed for that really, it's not a trail bike. But most of the bikes that are coming out now have the ability to do both. If you look at the Kenevo, okay, the Kenevo's a couple of years old, but it's got the Bros motor, and the Kenevo's by no means the snappiest bike to move around, but it is more agile than the Mondraker. Climbing, well, yeah, it climbs, man. It's the chainstay is half a meter long almost, and the wheelbase is really, really long with 29er wheels. And you just pop the motor in turbo or EMTB, it will just cruise up everything. So I think this bike really is designed for somebody that just wants to send it downhill as fast as they possibly can and have a top chassis and an amazingly capable, brutal downhill weapon, and then wants to turbo back to the top. That really is what this bike is for. So if that's what you love doing, and actually I really enjoyed doing that, I would pick this bike. I would have no issue picking this bike to do a massive long mountain descent. I think that would be really, really good fun. What I don't think this bike is good for is if you want to ride a variety of terrain and have an all-round bike. This is not what this bike is designed for. However, what I will say is it actually made me a better rider once I got onto another bike, because I'd learned to have the weight and use my body even more so because I had to overcompensate. As soon as I got off this bike and onto another bike, I found it so much easier to maneuver, and I think I actually upskilled myself by riding this bike. I think that if you are getting this bike, you are buying it for a very specific purpose, and like I said already, to be fair, that's pretty much what it's designed for. I only wish that with this bike that it was a little bit lighter and it had a different motor. I think that really is its Achilles heel. If it had a different motor, I think they could have kept the chainstay a bit shorter. It would have been easier to handle on trails and natural stuff more so than it is now, and it would have been at least a kilogram lighter, and these kilograms start to add up and they start to combine with the geometry and just make it more difficult to ride. In terms of where it ranks on the e-bometer, my really quick, crude way of ranking bikes, how fun is it? Fun is everything to me. Fun is like, how does it make you feel when you look at it? Does it make you feel good? Does it make you feel fun? For me, I like that kind of playful feeling. Others might see fun as just sending it downhill. So this is my own ranking. And value. Excellent value, so it represents real good value for money, like you're getting real good bang for buck, or is it poor value for money? Value and cost are not the same. Value is, are you getting good bang for buck? I don't want this to become cheap bikes are excellent value, because it doesn't always work like that. But what you're getting for £7,699 is a lot of bike. However, I don't think it is great value. So I think it's kind of like in the middle for value. It's not cheap, it's expensive, but you're getting it dripping with factory stuff. The thing that really lets it down for me is a Bosch motor. I'm not a fan of this Bosch motor for this type of bike. It just adds unnecessary weight and dragginess, and it's just not refined at all. It's a bit noisy. The control on the top looks just a bit old-fashioned, and for 2019 I don't think the motor cuts it. So I'm going to pop it kind of like down here. Fun when I was bombing it downhill. If I was doing more downhill stuff and was just shuttling to the top, I'm sure it would kind of come a little bit further up here. But when I compare it to something like the Vitus E-Summit, that has got 170mm and 160mm shock. So it's a similar kind of bike in terms of head angle and travel, but it is so much more nimble. That's where it sits right now for me. So there you go. If you've got any questions about the bike, pop it down below. I do try and give you my unbiased, unfiltered opinion, and like, this is me, an average at best kind of rider, giving you my thoughts and opinion, and I try and tell it like it is. So if you do like that kind of stuff, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down and pop a comment down below. And I bring out weekly videos, so if you do want to see more, subscribe, and I will catch up with you all soon. Take care. Bye.